know what the thing is.
I just wanted to see what he would do. I don't know.
I didn't know if you needed to. You're not moving too
You know,
good.
I help. The government needs help. The world needs help. My landscaping needs help.
Jen,
Thank you
Daniel,
very
Daniel,
much.
Jen.
Nice to meet you. Thank you very
Get
much.
yourself comfortable situated.
From here.
7:05, Mark.
Here we go.
The following is brought to you in part by MFC Studios. The views of the show's host and guests do not necessarily reflect those of the management, owners, or staff of this radio station. And now, it came from the radio.
I'm here in front of a live studio audience.
Yay!
At the East Meadow Public Library for our 90th, I believe this is our 90th live show. I'm here with our senior correspondent, Charlie Saladino.
Hello, fun seekers.
And we have our disabled guest co-host, Alman Kelly.
Hello. That's all I got.
And we also have our special guest who we're going to be talking to, with, and about, which is awesome because he's right here. We have video game expert. What would you consider this? What's the title of this thing? Tabletop game?
Yes, this is a science fiction tabletop role-playing game called Omega Horizon. Just came out.
And that is Mr. Daniel
Prisco-Buxbaum.
Prisco-Buxbaum.
And I am the president of Go Gaming.
And the president of Paleo Game, which he has been a guest on for many years. I was pointing out 9 years ago.
9 years, crazy.
But we're going to be talking to Daniel in just a minute, which is awesome because he's here. It makes it a lot easier. But before we do that, we have to take it away with the news. The news is brought to you in part by the fine folks at sci-fi.radio. That is sci-fi.
For your Wi-Fi.
As well as the fine folks at the Big Apple Con, which we are the official radio show of, celebrating over 26, 7, 8, 9 years of comic myths and pop culture stuff. For more information, go to www.bigapplecc.com. The next convention is scheduled all the way in November on the 22nd. Tickets are on sale right now, so you can buy tickets right now and wait, 6 months to get to go to the convention. Also want to give out shout-outs for our Patreons, of which there are Danny Grillo, award-winning director John Burrell, Newsday famous Dresden Media, Shadow Aguirre, Yasmin Ray, The Huracan, and Millie Cortez. Want to have your own little shout-out? Go to our website, www.itcamefromradio.com, and there's a little button on there that takes you right to our Patreon page. Also on the It Came From the Radio website is my book, Designated, a book about two warring alien races fighting over to discover the power source, the war finds its way to planet Earth, and as a result, some humans gain abilities. Issue 1 is on sale right now, and issue 2 is in pre-order. Also want to mention that on the 30th of May, it will be in Hop Holly, there will be the Trek Long Island Star Trek Convention, and the headliner will be Terry Farrell. That'll be Dax from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And I believe that's all the news thing I have, so let's start with the sad news, as we always do. Actor Eugene Allen Hackman, professionally known as just Gene Hackman, recently died in his home from severe heart disease complicated by advanced Alzheimer's and kidney diseases. Now, according to reports, his wife also had died about a week earlier from hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, which is a rare but potentially life-threatening viral disease that affects the lungs. Authorities believe he was unable to comprehend her death due to his Alzheimer's. In his 40-year career, Gene was in a slew of movies and TV shows of every genre. Most notably for me, he played Lex Luthor in 3 of the 4 Christopher Reeve Superman movies. Of note, his last role was a comedy with the Ariel Raymond, Ray Romano, which was Welcome to Mooseport back in 2004. Charlie, were you a fan of Gene's work?
Oh, hell yeah, definitely. He was an amazing actor. I mean, he was drama, comedy, anything he was in. He was just amazing. He aced every role he had. I mean, you go from something like the French Connection to the Birdcage. I mean, you're talking about, and aced it, yeah, definitely a great loss in the acting community.
Jen, you're not familiar with Gene Hackman's work? Because I have to say that for myself, I haven't seen much of his work, surprisingly enough. He's always in a lot of movies that I just don't watch.
Yeah.
But I did see him in Superman, so I'm like, that's who I know him from. Do you have westerns or anything like Unforgiven and that stuff?
I hope his soul is okay.
Daniel, you a fan of Gene's work?
I think that he predates me a bit, but his later acting career, I was a fan, yeah.
So he was 95 years old. So moving on for the second bit of sad news, actor Peter Edward Osling, known professionally as just Peter Jason, also died recently from cancer. Peter was one of those that guy actors that was in a ton of movies and TV shows and made-for-TV movies such as Another 48 Hours, the original Karate Kid, Brewster's Millions, They Live, Arachnophobia, The Village of the Damned Remake, Congo, the original Mortal Kombat, Escape from LA, Dante's Peak, Seabiscuit, Employee of the Month, Pale Secret, which I did enjoy, Jurassic World, Lost Kingdom, 26 episodes of the TV series Mike Hammer, 26 episodes of the TV series Deadwood, and the movie Deadwood, just to name a few. Of note, Peter also appeared as Daniel Whitford in 2 of the Wing Commander games from the 90s, as well as Dizzy Whalen in Gears of War 2 and 3 in 2000s. He was 80 years old. As a gaming guy, are you familiar with his gaming work? Do you know those characters' names?
No, I'm not actually. I'll have to look him up after this. It's very interesting.
So as we always say, he's just, if you see him, you're like, oh, it's that guy.
Correct.
It's one of those people that has been in the industry forever but never had like a breakout role.
Right.
But he was always there.
Yeah.
So he was 80 years old. So moving on for the final bit of sad news. Actress Lynn Marie Stewart also died recently from cancer. Lynn was perhaps best known for her role of Bonnie, which is Charlie's mother, for 18 episodes of the series Always Sunny in Philadelphia, as well as Miss Yvonne, the most beautiful woman in Puppetland, a role which she originated on the 1981 Pee Wee Herman stage show, only to reprise the role in Pee Wee's Playhouse, which ran from 1986 to 1991 on CBS. Of note, Lynn was also part of the 2010 revival of the Pee Wee Herman stage show, which I went to see in person, playing Miss Yvonne once again. And she also provided the voice of Shirley of the Vernon and Shirley fame in the cartoon of the same name, as well as when they went to the army. Now, senior correspondent Charlie Saladino, do you remember the Laverne and Shirley and the cartoon?
Not the cartoon, but I don't remember. I remember Laverne and Shirley, but not the cartoon. Remember, I was old. I had to be out of the house. I couldn't, do cartoons at that time. Jack put me in the 70s, and I would have been,
Were you familiar with Pee Wee's Playhouse at all?
Oh, sure, yeah. Of course, because that was on when I could get rest on Saturday morning. I didn't have to work then. I loved Pee Wee's Playhouse.
So she was Miss Yvonne, that was the main thing. So you... I know!
Yes.
Jen, are you familiar with Always Sunny in Philadelphia and or Pee Wee's Playhouse?
Yes, I'm making my own Pee Wee's Playhouse at my house, turning it into full Christmas time every single day. And someone has referred to my house as Pee Wee's Playhouse, and that's what I have to offer about this.
Daniel, were you familiar with Pee Wee's Playhouse?
No, I think the takeaway, I'm aware of Pee Wee's Playhouse, but I think the takeaway here is I don't watch enough television. I have some catching up to do, apparently.
So that's it for the sad news. So moving on for the not as sad news, from the I think we're back to not caring again department. The ratings for the Oscars have come in, and they are down by 7% from last year, with a total of 18.1 million people watching, compared to the 19.5 million from the previous year. This also ends a slow 3-year increase since the pandemic, where in 2021 only 10.4 million people watched, down from 2020's 23.6 million people. Of note, people streaming the show on the streaming service Hulu missed out on about 20 minutes of the show because it ran over the allotted time slot of 3 hours and 30 minutes, so it just ended. Now, Charlie, I'm sure you remember one of the most famous things on television. Was it NBC or ABC that did the football game and they ended it before the?
No, that was NBC. They were doing a football game, and the Wonderful World of Disney got right in there with Heidi, and it was the end of the game. The play was getting ready to go. The guy said hike, and all of a sudden this girl on a hill was there. It was known as the Heidi game.
Wow.
Did you watch the Oscars by chance?
Did I do what?
Did you watch the Oscars by chance?
Back then I did, yeah. I used to like it back then. Now I can't stand it.
Why not?
Why not, Jim? What's that?
Why? Well, because instead of just getting the award and like Ricky says, getting the award and thanking your folks and anybody, people get political, and that's not. It's like our show. We don't get political. That's a show people should get political on.
Did you watch the Oscars, Jim?
No way.
Do you have any interest in watching Oscars?
No. I don't care about the judges. I don't care about who wins awards. I don't care about it's trendy. What do I care about? Dental health.
So my question as an actress, because this is always one of those situations where we as well at the show, as you're well aware, because you've been on the show for at least 6 years by now, 5, 6 years, we have a dubious relationship with award shows.
Right.
And so as an actress and filmmaker, if by some crazy chance you manage to get in a movie that is nominated for an Oscar, would you go?
If it was convenient. I don't know. I don't even go to one of my movie screenings there. When it's done, it's done. I don't care about any Oscar clout. And I wonder if people will care in 30 years. And who will be judging and deciding who's a winner and who's a loser in 30 years? Personally, I don't really have enough respect for the human condition to want their opinions and want their judgment. So why would I care about winning something judged by another human? True.
That's a fair statement. You've always had the fair statements. That's what we have on the show. Daniel, did you watch the Oscars?
I did not watch the Oscars. As a general stance, I think that the award shows are good in that I think it's worth celebrating the art form, and I think it's worth celebrating the stories and the hard work that goes into it. I do think that there's a general feeling these days that the judging may be questionable, and that certain groups may be being deprived of a fair shot at certain awards in some cases, and so I think that probably impacts viewership, and that could in part explain it, that it feels like a self-congratulatory machine at this point. But I think the idea of award shows is good. I think it's worth celebrating the stories that move us and connect us, and that I think is worth celebrating.
Since I mentioned Pee-wee's Playhouse, I remember the last official Oscars I watched was the one where Pee-wee Herman was up against RoboCop for Best Special Effects. And I believe RoboCop lost. I remember Pee-wee Herman lost. I forget which one lost. It was probably Pee-wee because I was a Pee-wee fan. And then during the performance, the RoboCop saved Pee-wee Herman from the Air 209 in the audience. And he flew over the audience and RoboCop showed up. And because he left, I'm not watching Oscars anymore. I'm done. That was when I stopped. And that was what, like 20-something years ago?
Wow.
So moving on. Speaking of the Oscars, as most of you know, that means that the Razzies has also been announced. So, the Razzies, for the Madam Web, got 3 awards for Worst Picture, Dakota Johnson as Worst Actress and Worst Screenplay. Unfrosted got 2 awards for Jerry Seinfeld as Worst Actor and Amy Schumer as Worst Supporting Actress. Megalopolis got 2 awards for Francis Ford Coppola's directing and John Voight as Supporting Actor. And lastly, Joker 2 won for Worst Remake, Ripoff, or Sequel, and Worst On-Screen Combo for himself and for Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga.
Oh yeah.
While not actually attending the award ceremony, Francis Ford Coppola did accept the award, saying, "I am thrilled to accept the Razzie Award in so many important categories for Megalopolis, and for the distinctive honor of being nominated as Worst Director, Worst Screenplay, and Worst Picture." For those of you who don't know, or care for that matter, the Razzies are a parody award show where movies win worst performances. The awards are given out the night before the Oscars. You were watching the Razzies, Charlie.
I love them. I love them. And I love to see the gentleman like Francis, I know him personally, who will go up and who will accept that, because these are people who would rather take the criticism than get the accolades for, oh, what a great job, because as a musician, I would want to know what I was doing wrong to correct it. So, I mean, I love the other end of that.
So on the flip side, Jen,
Yeah.
if for some reason, as a filmmaker and actress,
Yeah.
your movie or your performance was nominated for a Razzie,
Right.
would you show up?
You know what? I would show up whenever it's convenient, but again, the Razzies also, I feel like are just a bunch of BS. I can say BS on the radio. Because I'm in a lot of movies that are way, way, way worse. So the bad movies aren't even the real bad movies, because they're leaving out the real bad movies, which you don't really hear about. And this book, which we're gonna get to, the Omega Horizon Core Rule Book. I mean, there's so much work put into this. I feel like this is worthy of a lot more awards than a lot of the stuff we see winning awards here.
And
I mean,
as we've done with the best and worst every year, I have seen stuff that's way worse than the stuff that's been quote unquote
you
nominated.
know what I think people should do? I think we should forget all these award shows, and every single person should be mandatory and mandated to pick their best and worst of the year. And then we get the real people's opinion, not the dumb electoral college, Grammy, Oscar, Razzie vote. How about that?
So it's actually funny you mentioned that.
Yeah.
So as many people know on the show, I used to work at Blockbuster.
Right.
And one year they had the Blockbuster Awards, and it was supposedly chosen by the fans. So we had kiosks in every single Blockbuster where people came and they boop, 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 and they pressed the thing. Now, because I worked there,
Yeah.
when I was slow, I used to just press all the buttons all the time. So it was a very not scientific thing at all. So I'm sure if I did it, there must have been tons of people just going in there pressing buttons and just all A's today, all B's today.
This is why you need the voter ID card, the registration. You have to show
Yeah.
some type of proof for Social Security. And then you can get the real worst movie of the year, the real best movie of the year, the real best book, real best game. I want to hear from the people. Okay, who are these judges?
Well, I think to some degree we have a little bit of that in sites like Rotten Tomatoes, right? Where you have the community score
That's
versus the
always
critic
wrong.
score. Well, but I think what's interesting is you have the juxtaposition of the two different scores, and it allows you to sort of read between the lines. And you know, the really powerful signal is when it comes out and both really liked it, and you go, all right, maybe this is a movie worth seeing, right? As opposed to it's always this huge, 20% critics hated it, but the fans loved it, or vice versa.
What was the other one?
There was a few other, Rotten Tomatoes is the one that I know of, but I think
Right.
there's like a CineScore. I think there's a bunch of them that do it.
Yeah, I don't trust Rotten Tomatoes. They're always wrong. They're always wrong. They always give the opposite review.
Right.
Whatever I love has like 0 tomatoes or whatever tomato you want. That's, I don't know. It's just all backwards. It's all backwards.
So moving on from the That's a Lot of Nuts department.
That's a lot of nuts.
The new sci-fi film, Mickey 17, which I had completely forgot about, by the way, has taken the #1 spot in the domestic box office, pulling in a quote-unquote disappointing $19 million in ticket sales in its first week release, beating out the new Captain America sequel, which came at the #2 spot, making an additional $8.3 million in its fourth week release. For those of you keeping track, Captain America 4 is the highest grossing film this year so far, we're only 3 months in, with $177.2 million, followed by the Lion King prequel with $122.4 million. Mickey 17 comes in at 17. For those of you who don't know, Mickey 17 was about a clone who was trying to, I think, do like a mining experiment or something. There's like a dark comedy, and every time he gets killed, he gets a place with himself. So it's a dark sci-fi comedy. I had heard about it, and then I completely forgot about it until I was doing the news. Like, oh yeah, this movie came out. So I guess the marketing was not there for this movie to make any money, and it got me disappointed. $19 million. Charlie, have you seen Captain America and or Mickey 17?
What was that movie? Because I wasn't listening to you.
I'm gonna say no. Captain America. Have you seen Captain America?
No, and I don't care about the $19 million. Unless it's in my pocket, I don't care about it.
Yeah. Ditto.
Jen says ditto.
Ditto.
Daniel, have you seen either one of those two? Have you heard of them?
I saw Captain America Brave New World. I did enjoy it overall. I don't think it's Marvel's strongest offering. I walked out of there feeling like Marvel was doing the necessary work to right the ship a little bit. I felt that in recent years, it's been well publicized that the fans have kind of felt like they were losing the thread with the MCU. The multiverse saga has not been very well received. And I felt like Brave New World was not stupendous, it was not earth-shattering, but I did feel like it felt like a Marvel movie again, and like they were getting back to what really made the movies as successful as they have been.
I saw Captain America and I thought it was alright. Like, it wasn't the greatest thing, but it really wasn't as bad as everything else that's come out before it. I did like the Marvels, I liked a little bit. I think that's about it, but yeah, it was alright. Like, it was just there. I saw it through various methods, so I didn't affect the money that it made, but you know, would I have gone to see it in the theaters? Probably not. So it didn't make me want to go out there to see it. So moving on to the last bit of sad news. From these movies, what time does the movie really start department? In India, a man sued the biggest movie chain in the country, claiming that there were too many commercials being shown before the feature film that he paid to see, and he won.
Wow.
Wow.
Alright, I'm gonna pronounce this name. Sorry.
That's interesting.
ABSIHEK, Abhishek MR, who happens to be a lawyer, claimed that his time was wasted and that he suffered quote-unquote mental agony as a result of the 25 minutes of commercials that preceded a 2023 screening of the film Sam Bahadur. Apparently, Abidesh brought 3 tickets to the film, and according to the schedule, which is due to start at 4:05 p.m. and finish at 6:30 p.m., Abidesh, who's the lawyer, had scheduled a work call for 6:30 p.m., but had to miss it as the film did not finish until around 7 p.m. due to, quote, trailers, advertisements, and other fillers which wasted nearly 30 minutes of the time. While he initially sued for only $574 in damages, with an additional $57 for mental agony and $115 for legal costs, Abidesh was awarded $230 in damages, $92 in costs, and the company had to pay $1,148 to the Consumer Welfare Fund, which is a government body that aims to protect customers. Charlie, what do you think of that?
I have mental duress when I'm watching TV and all the commercials are on. I can imagine this poor guy, and I don't have to be anywhere without that thing. No, I can see how you get frustrated, but I just have to laugh at that because you can sue anybody for anything.
But he won, that's the thing, he won.
Yeah, well, that's the whole funny part, because now, like on the hot coffee cups where this thing is hot, they're gonna have to put on the movie thing. We have a lot of commercials. Expect to be here 30 minutes extra. We have a lot of commercials.
Jen?
I'm kind of proud of this guy, and I wonder if his parents are proud that he put his law degree to work. Because think about it, I have a fitness degree and health degree, as well as kettlebell. Maybe I should only get kettlebell around there where to really make use of it. Like, this guy's really getting the most for his money. So this guy seems like a real educated guy, and I can't wait to see who he sues next.
You think he's gonna be going around soon because he won?
Hell yeah!
He's on his stool.
He's like a man, and then, has these dumb pickup lines and gives it to like 30 women and works for 10. It's like, alright, I'm gonna keep going. Like, this works. Let's see what else I can do.
Daniel, what do you think?
I rolled my eyes a little when you started the story, but it's funny now that I'm actually spending some time thinking about it. Maybe it's not the worst thing if these movies come with real, this is how much time is going to be allocated to commercials. You can opt out if you want to, right? Show up a little bit later, no, you're not going to miss the movie.
Go to the bathroom.
Right, right.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, you're actually working with that. That's terrible.
Yeah, there's a lot of people probably get kidney infections because they're holding it, because they're not going to the bathroom, they don't want to miss anything. But if they knew, I had another 8 minutes, there you go. I mean, that could have saved you your kidneys.
So, as I've mentioned also on the show for many years, I used to work at a movie theater, and I was also in charge of putting the trailers on the movie. So exactly, we were required to put certain trailers on certain movies, and it was about like 12 to 15 minutes on trailers that we were required to put in. But even as a kid growing up, I always knew that the movie didn't start when it started. I always knew it was afterwards. So the fact that in this situation the guy didn't know was kind of odd to me, but the fact that he sued and won, that's the part that he won, was crazy, because if you remember, we talked about the guy who sued the movie yesterday, the Beatles movie, that because the trailer was misleading, and he went to the movies to see the actress that was in the trailer but was cut from the movie, he sued and he lost.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, I was like, wow, I can't believe somebody sued, but he lost. I was like, he lost, but this guy won, and it's blowing my mind. Wow. And it reminds me of a time when I was working at the movie theater. I was in charge of a projection, and this was when we had switched over from actual film to digital. And so how it works is that you get the film in a hard drive at the time, or you get it downloaded, and you can put it in any of the theaters digitally, but it won't play unless you have the access code that's emailed to you from the studios, and it's only good for a certain amount of time. So somebody messed up, it wasn't me, and it really wasn't me, and we didn't get the email for the access code of the film. And so we're about to play the movie. It was a 500-seat theater, it was packed, and the movie wasn't playing, and we had to try and figure out why it wasn't, and I realized we didn't have the access code. So my boss was on the phone trying to get the access code emailed while we had a full house of people waiting. And so what I did, I just put a whole bunch of trailers on there. So I played the trailers, we didn't have the movie ready to buy us time so we wouldn't have an angry mob. And we went on for about 20 minutes.
Oh, but the only thing, that guy from India was in there, he sued him.
Exactly, right.
So, it's one of those behind the scenes that I was like, I wonder if they're ever known.
Did the audience start to catch on? Did you have some people just looking around?
No, I just playing trailers and playing trailers and playing trailers, and then we got the thing, and I plugged it in, I switched it over, no one was surprised.
Because we've had tons of people, millions of people having their times wasted until this, brave lawyer finally stood up for all of us, and that's gonna be put to an end. So people like you can't get away with your garbage anymore.
People always trying to save the day.
Yeah, people like you are everywhere. They're playing trailers and they don't need to, all these commercials, wasting people's time, giving people kidney infections, making this guy miss business meetings.
So Jen, I'm hearing he's not the hero we wanted, he's the hero we deserve.
Yeah, I think this was coming, it's partially maybe Mark's fault. So the guy had his blood boiling and, kidneys festering for years, and he's like, that's it, I'm gonna sue.
Well, to be fair, like I said, there would have been an angry mob of 500 people because the movie wasn't ready to go and started. So I kind of saved an angry mob from
Correct, and that was okay because this lawyer didn't exist yet. But we didn't really, I think we should have him on the show. I would like to have him on.
We should try to reach out to him.
Yeah.
You know what? I will do that. I will find this person. I will email and
Yes, please.
Alright, see, now you got me working for something to do for this year. That'll be my goal.
Abhishek, where are you?
Just a personal point here. I saw yesterday, getting back to that, because you sort of went off the rails there, but I saw it yesterday, and I thought it was really good until the end, because it was done well, and I was waiting to find out what happened, and they don't, it just ends. And when you're waiting, you go, oh, I can't wait to see how this, and all of a sudden the credits roll, I go, wait a minute. I was like almost furious. Although it was a good movie, that ending was like, all right, I need to know what happened. And maybe you don't, but I did.
So how come you didn't sue for the ending of the movie?
Well, because my coffee was too hot, I put myself, went to the hospital, forgot all about the movie.
Did you sue?
So that's it for the thankfully. So we're going to take a quick break in front of a live studio audience.
Yay!
There's more that came from the radio.
Hey everybody, it's Todd McFarlane of the record-setting Spawn comic series. And if you're looking for any kind of cool conversation about creators, about entertainment, about all that good stuff, you go to It Came From the Radio. You're listening to the right spot.
This is Quentin Flynn, a popular voice actor known for Axel. Come on. and writing from the Metal Gear series. And you're listening to It Came From the Radio. Stick around.
Hey, I'm Mike Kingston, the writer and creator of Headlocked. And I am WWE Hall of Famer Jeremy the King Lawler. And guess what you're listening to? You're listening to It Came From the Radio.
Hi, this is Amy Jo Johnson, writer-director from the film The Space Between, and you're listening to It Came From the Radio.
Meet Grimlock having fun on It Came From the Radio. Meet Greg Berger also.
Now, back to our show.
And welcome back to It Came From the Radio, the official The Big Apple Con. This is Joe Smart Jordan speaking. In front of our live studio audience at the Eastern Public Library for our 90th show, I'm here with Mr. Daniel Prisco-Buxbaum, who is our special guest. We're here with Charlie Cardino. And Mr. Mailman Jamie Dillon.
Good day.
So as I mentioned, we're going to be talking with Daniel, but yeah, we've known Daniel for, you said it was 9 years, right? 9 years. 9 years you came on the show. What have you been doing since then?
Too much. So when I was last on the show, Failure Gaming was still in its infancy, and at that time we were primarily an esports company. We were doing competitive video game tournaments, participating in tournaments. We had teams going around the country, participating in prize tournaments for games. We were also hosting games through our Imperial Esports brand. But over time, the landscape changed, and I felt like it was getting harder and harder to make a profit in that space. And I became really frustrated primarily because of changes that were implemented by the game developers that made it really hard for pro-am organizations like Failure Gaming to thrive. And it felt bad just being sort of at the whim of bigger companies. We got hedged out by big franchisees. They moved to a franchise model. And so I sat down and did some soul searching as to whether I wanted to even keep the company going or whether it was time to throw in the towel. And after I gave it some thought, I said, the biggest problem here is that I don't own the arena we're playing in, right? So that I am at the whim of the actual developers of the games. And so I said, the only way I'm going to be able to hedge my bets in that regard is to own something. And so first I looked a little bit into video game or mobile game design, and my concern there was that I lacked the skill sets I would really need to confidently wade into those waters. I would have to outsource the majority of the talent. And so I sat back and said, okay, well, what am I good at? What can I actually market here? And I had been running tabletop role-playing games as a game master or dungeon master for many, many years. I started DMing when I was 12. I found an old copy of the original Dungeons & Dragons in the family garage and broke it open and figured out how to play it and started running it for my friends. And if you DM long enough, you start to homebrew stuff and create your own material. You're creating stories, you're creating characters, you're creating game mechanics in some cases. And the longer you do that for, you eventually sort of look back at your journey and realize that you've changed the game fundamentally so much that it's really a different game, right? And so I said, I have those skill sets. I can write, I can create. I had done a lot of theory crafting, gamification, and game statistics to come up with new rules and things like that. And so really at that point, all I had to figure out was a way of approaching it with discipline and an understanding of the path to production to something that looks professional. But those initial skill sets were there, at least the toolkit to start doing something like this. And so I decided to shift the company's focus to tabletop gaming, and we did that. We launched a Kickstarter campaign. Our first Kickstarter campaign did not fund, which was heartbreaking. And so again, that was sort of a point where I was at a crossroads of maybe this isn't going to work out, but thankfully I took a little break, some breathing room, and kind of went back to the basics and started doing some networking and getting to know people in the industry. And that led to a successful Kickstarter campaign, which was in 2022. And then now here we are. We just released the game, which is fantastic. It's a fun game. It's a game that my friends and I play. we've gotten a lot of good feedback from other players in the community, people who backed on Kickstarter, people who've been part of our playtesting cohorts, and yeah, it's the story.
So how does one decide what genre to have the game in? Because you mentioned Dungeons & Dragons, but I remember in the 90s they had a bazillion different types of role-playing tabletop games. Was it just something that you were a particular fan of, or was it something that you found that there was a niche that needed to be addressed?
That's a great question, and there still are, I mean, just innumerable role-playing games. It's a really full industry, but I actually spent a lot of time thinking about what genre I wanted for my first game, because we've got actually a couple other games planned that will use this rule set. We're calling it the Paleo Gaming Rule System, or the PGRS. So we've got a fantasy game that is already starting to be, the groundwork is being laid for that. We are going to do a comic book superhero game also. It'll be part of like a game trilogy, but ultimately I did feel that the science fiction gaming field in particular was a little bit less crowded of a space than fantasy gaming, which I think that the lion's share of games fall under the umbrella of fantasy. But I also felt that there was a little bit of a void for original science fiction storytelling, with few exceptions. For example, Cyberpunk is a really original tabletop game, but in many cases, the science fiction tabletop space, in my experience, is primarily filled with licensed material. There's an Alien role-playing game, there's a Star Trek role-playing game, there's a Star Wars role-playing game. There's not a lot that I've come across, at least, really original sci-fi games. You've got Starfinder, which is made by the same company that makes Pathfinder, and that's a unique sci-fi setting. As I mentioned, Cyberpunk is really a unique setting, Shadowrun is a unique setting, but there's not a lot of them compared to the plethora of fantasy games. So I decided to take a chance and do that, and I had some material. I'd written some science fiction short stories when I was in college, and so I sort of dug those up and said this would be an interesting premise for a game if I expanded on it. The other reason I went with science fiction is because, as someone who's played a lot of role-playing games, I feel like there's a lot of games that do fantasy well, but science fiction I had always felt was harder to codify and gamify, partly because of the epic scale of science fiction. You've got starships, you've got things that are really big and do a lot of damage and are very dangerous, and how do you capture that in a way that is fair and balanced, but accurately captures the reasonable terror that players should feel when facing certain creatures or obstacles. And so I spent a lot of time nailing down a rule system that captures that feel.
Charlie, do you have a question?
No, I have more of an observation. I was going through the book, and believe me, you can't go through this book. This is like the Bible of this game, and it is amazing. The illustrations alone, and but it's an incredible book. I can't even picture think about all the work that you put into this book, and it's like the Bible, and it's also and we could mention this because it also, in my opinion, you don't need a permit to buy it and use it as a home invasion weapon.
No.
Just saying.
I think it's almost 5 pounds.
Yeah.
Dennis, do you have a question or observation on the side of this giant book?
So as someone who hasn't played any game except Scrabble, I think in the last 10 years, and tennis, how do you play this game? And do you need to memorize this entire book to play it? Like how much study, how many hours of study do you think someone like me, who doesn't know anything, would need to be able to play this game?
You don't need much, actually.
I don't have much. So. Thank you.
I can say that because part of our playtesting cohorts, we did bring in people who had never played role-playing games to see how easy it would be for them to pick up the game and play. So there's a couple prongs to that question. The first is, how much do you need to memorize? The answer is not much, but with any role-playing game, you have a game master, which again has different games. Some games call it a storyteller or a director or a dungeon master, or the GM, right? And so the GM should have a really good understanding of the game, its rules,
Okay.
and what's available, and will help the players through playing the game.
Got it.
The players can come into the game with relatively little knowledge, and if they have a good GM, which we have, one of the things I included in this book, and part of the reason why it's so thick, is because rather than just present the rules, we spend a lot of time sort of hand-holding game masters who may be first-time game masters for what kind of information you should be feeding to players and how they should approach teaching players the game and things like that. The actual game itself is relatively easy to play. A lot of the material in this book comes down to background information, options for players, different species they can play as, different careers for their characters that impact gameplay, different starships that they can pilot, different creatures that they can fight. There's a lot of material in here. And role-playing games, very often, developers will break games up into multiple books, right? So Dungeons & Dragons famously has the trio of books, the Player's Guide, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual. Many other books will have like a Game Master's Guide and a Player's Guide. And it was very important to me as I set out to do this, to make the game as accessible as possible for people. I wanted you to be able to buy one game and have everything you needed, whether you were a game master, whether you were a player, everything you needed to play the game, make your own stories. And so the book is a little bit bigger because of it, but I think it also represents a nice value because of that. You only have to buy the one book to get invested in the game. As far as how the game is played, tabletop role-playing games are collaborative storytelling games. So it's sort of like a choose-your-own-adventure novel that's being written as you're reading. And so the game master is responding in real time to the choices your characters are making and your backstories and things like that. And they're feeding you material, and then it's basically a master class in improv, right? So actors love to play games like this because it's just constant improv between you, your fellow players, and the game master. The game master represents your senses in the world, what you see, what you hear. They describe, there'll be exposition sometimes, information that your characters might have access to. And then they design challenges that your characters, as you play the game, will be challenged by. And most challenges in the game are resolved with dice rolls, which is common for tabletop role-playing games. There are some games that take different approaches, some newer games, they do a lot of stuff with playing cards or dice or whatever, but the answer is it all boils down to statistics. It introduces the variability of chance into the game, that things don't always go the way you want them to, even if you're good at doing something, you can fail, right? And very often, the most interesting storytelling comes out of failure rather than success. How does your character grapple with things that they try to do and fail at, or the repercussions of the actions that they did not successfully complete a mission or something? And so Omega Horizon is it's a unique system we designed. It is a 6-sided dice roll and keep system. So depending on how many ranks you have in a set of skills, it determines how many dice you get to roll. And then your trait determines how many dice you get to keep on that roll. You add those results together, and that becomes what goes against the challenge target number to see if you succeed or fail.
Is it recommended to dress up as one of the characters?
I wouldn't say recommended. I mean, some groups definitely will, right?
Yeah.
They call that LARPing, live action role play.
Right.
It's not something that we baked into the game.
Okay.
But certainly everyone plays their own way. So.
Some of these characters, I mean, it'd probably be thousands of dollars just to get their outfit. You know? What do we have? We have the Gelad, the Gilad. I saw here. We have a Yezerai. I mean, yeah, this is going to be $200 at least in the store. So, and you don't see any fingers on this guy, so he's not going to be able to pick up any type of cards or roll any type of dice. He's going to have to like use telepathy or telekinesis, or he's going to have to hire an android or a drone to do it for him. I don't know.
Well, we do have telepathy in the game, so at least that's captured.
Yes, that's my homework.
So, generally speaking, how many people do you need the minimum to play the game, and what kind of preparation do you need to do? You buy the game, you come home, how much time do you need?
Minimum 2 people. You need at least 1 game master, 1 player. In theory, there's no maximum, but a comfortable group size would be 3 to 5 players and 1 game master. As far as prep time, I often recommend that people put at least a half hour aside if they want to make their own character. We do offer, as a free download on our website, pre-made characters if you want to just hand out character sheets and take out that aspect of it so you can get right into the story. Actual gameplay could be as little as an hour, as much as 4 to 6 hours. I don't usually recommend that people go much longer than that from fatigue. But Omega Horizon, you can design stories that are one-offs, that you sit down for 2 hours, you play a game and it's over, you've accomplished whatever you set out to accomplish. Or you can string game sessions together for longer campaigns. You can string campaigns together in an almost televised, series, episodic sort of approach to do multiple campaigns, which we call a chronicle. But really, again, part of the awesome thing about tabletop role-playing games is they can be whatever you want them to be. A board game, if you sit down to play a game of Monopoly or a game of Risk, you have predefined win conditions and you're all there for however long it takes to reach those win conditions. Tabletop role-playing games is about telling a story, and that story goes as long as you want the story to go before you come to some satisfying ending, and then you just figure out the next story to tell. And there's so many different stories you can tell in this universe.
So on that same note, how long did it take you to create that book and to make it be that easy for other people to play?
It's a tricky answer. 6 is the most accurate answer, I think. So again, I've been homebrewing material for other games really since I was 12 years old. So I have a lot of experience doing this, just creating little bits and bobs to strap onto Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever the game we're playing at the time. From the time I said I'm going to make a role-playing game to when we actually published the game was 6 years. But it was 3 years of what I would call disciplined game design. The first 3 years was more me bungling my way through it a little bit because I'd never done it before and really didn't know where to start. And likely, in hindsight, I started in the wrong places. The first year, I was working with a completely different system than what it looks like now, and just realized it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do, which was frustrating. But rather than trying to force it, I went back to the drawing board and kind of started over. And so really, this is almost like our second edition being published first, right? That I figured out the stuff that didn't work and threw it in the garbage, and started over. But we landed on a system that I really like, and I also spent the amount of time I did because I knew I wanted to do a trilogy of games out the gate. And so I had to spend a lot of time being intentional in designing a game that would scale and that could be very modular, that you can play different types of games without essentially throwing the game balance out the window. That's one of the biggest problems I have found in games that have tried to reskin other systems. So Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is the edition that's currently out. I know they're working on 6th edition or something like that, but 5th edition is the game that's really out in force right now for Dungeons and Dragons. And there has been a slew of games that have reskinned 5th edition because there is an open gaming license that you can use their rules. And they're popular and people know them, so a lot of game developers capitalize on that, thinking that they'll be able to sort of catch the crosswinds of that and have more success. And I've picked up a couple of science fiction games that use the 5e rules, but the 5e rules don't really work for science fiction. It's a different feel. Again, the scale is different when you're doing swords and sorcery, one-on-one combat versus, okay, no, we have battleships that have 6,000 people on them. How does that work? Right? How do these rules translate to that? You go from shooting an arrow at someone to setting off a pipe bomb, and how is that the same, right? And so I gave a lot of thought ahead of time to what rule systems I wanted to put in place for each of these games in the trilogy and how that would affect the other games, because they're designed to be matched together. So when our fantasy game comes out, if you want to take Omega Horizon, and the working title for that game is Legends of Draconia, if you want to take Omega Horizon and Draconia and smash them together, you get a Spelljammer game, right? I get magic in space, right? And cool stuff like that. When the comic book game comes out, you can smash that together with the fantasy game. Now you've got deities and demigods, right? You've got Hercules running around. If you slam together Omega Horizon in that game, you got the Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Where all the spaceships, we have superpowers and stuff too. And so I had to have a lot of forethought about how those pieces would fit together without undermining the core premise and feel of the game.
So when you test the game out, do you prefer to be the player or the dungeon master?
That's a great question. There's value in both. There's value in both, and I spend time doing both. Being a game master is good because when you're in that mentality, you're in an almost designer mentality, and so you're taking notes when players are asking certain questions or making certain decisions, saying, okay, I have to anticipate that. But I have found that no matter how much time I spend doing that and thinking like a designer, almost the moment I step on the other side of the table, I'm immediately like, I wish I could have done this thing, and the rules didn't let me do that, or I didn't think that this would come up, and it did. And so there's definitely value in playing games. And it's funny, Matt Forbeck, who did the Marvel 616 tabletop role-playing game, I was listening to a podcast he was on, and he said when people ask him what he does for a living, he says, I play games. I don't design games, I play games, right? Designing the games is sort of secondhand. That his real job is just to go out there and see different systems and how they work. And so I kind of internalize that I want to play as much as I can, because I'll find the nooks and crannies that aren't working the way I want them to, and then I can step back into the developer shoes and say, well, now how do I fix that? That's not an issue anymore.
So with making this core rulebook, over all this time, testing it on both ends of the, I guess, game screen would be the term, how do you know when you're done?
You're never done. You're never done, but what was it, Churchill who had the quote that perfect is the enemy of good? If you agonize over making something perfect, first of all, you can't be everything to everyone. I know not everyone's going to love Omega Horizon. It's gotten a warm reception from people who picked it up, and I'm grateful for that. I'm waiting for the inevitable, this game is garbage, and that's fine. I'll take that with a grain of salt, because I know there's no such thing as a perfect game. I tried to create something that I believe does resonate with a number of different approaches to gaming, purposefully. For example, we actually created a variable complexity in the game. Tabletop role-playing games typically fall into one of two categories. You have games that are considered what they call crunchy, which is heavy rules. There's a lot to know, a lot to memorize. It can have a pretty high barrier of entry, but the people who like it are the people who spend a lot of time trying to maximize their character's effectiveness. They want to know every possible rule and figure out the best combinations. Very sort of math-minded people. Crunchy. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have narrative games that are really focused on the story, minimal, sometimes even no dice rolls. It's just about telling a fun story with your friends, right? Those games, typically, it's almost impossible to fail at whatever you're trying to do. And so people who like challenges tend to snooze through that. That's not as effective. So I have had the pleasure and sometimes frustration of GMing for groups that have a mix of those people, and that makes it very hard to pick games to play, because you have some people are yawning that it's too boring, and other people are scratching their heads because they can't understand what's going on. And so we created a system in Omega Horizon where you can take the rules as written are fairly crunchy, but there's an entire section of the game mastering chapter that's dedicated to here's how you can simplify the rules. Here's what you throw out right out the gate, or if you really want to make it more narrative, you can solve everything with a single dice roll, right? And then you just get into the description. We call it cinematic, right? Cinematic play. And so I tried to make a game that would appeal to the widest audience possible, but stay true to the core vision for the game. But it's not perfect, it'll never be perfect. It is good. It got to a point where I can say I'm very proud of the game we put together. I think it's a really solid game. I think the game looks beautiful. I think it's worth the investment to get into the game. I think it does a lot of things for your gaming group, and it is designed to be modular, so you can also take the game, even though we've put a lot of thought and energy into making a whole world and setting and cultures and factions into the game. If you wanted to, you could reskin this as your favorite sci-fi franchise, and the rule system is modular enough that you can do that in a really easy way. But also eventually we'll do supplement books. We're going to support the game, so we're already working on a supplement called Omega Horizon Expanded Horizons, which is just going to add more everything, more species, more careers, more everything. Which, I mean, I wish I could have put it all in the core rule book, but then it would be 1,000 pages instead of 544, which is already above average.
What, you answered most of my question right there, but from the beginning, with all the testing and then you're finally you finally roll back the desk chair and you say, this is it. What's the personal feeling that you have running through your body?
I'm going to give you a couple answers. Yes, I was very happy, and again, proud that I had seen something through, because that's the hard thing. You know, a lot of people start things, not as many people finish things. So it felt really good getting to the point where I'm like, okay, it's done. There was also an element of like, towards the end, I can't wait till this is over, right? And again, I was listening to another developer talking, and he said there's a lag that happens in game design where you start a project and it's new and it's exciting and you're creating, and the creative juices are flowing and you feel great. And then 3 years later, 6 years later, right, you're like, I don't want to look at this ever again. And then it goes out to market, and for everyone else it's now new and they're excited about it, they want to talk to you about it. You're like, I never want to talk about this ever again, right? I want to do the next thing. And so there's that funny disconnect that you kind of have to, but I think there's also an element of rejuvenation that when people now talk about it, it gets exciting and new again. But the other thing I was going to say is I've had a realization recently with the game being done, it's done, right? Where I was almost bored. It was like, no, the act of creation, that's where the passion is. When I'm creating, when I'm coming up with a story, when I'm coming up with interesting rules and abilities and things like that, I feel energized. Once it's done, I'm almost divorced from it. It's like, it's not mine anymore. Now it's yours. Now it belongs to the players. When I was making it, it's mine, and it felt like mine, and I was invested, and then you publish it, and now it's not mine anymore. Now it belongs to the world, right?
But it did give you a major advantage in creating expanded horizons.
It's true, and the lessons I learned in the process of developing this game, I think will vastly help me reduce the time to the next game by half or more, because I've figured out the right order to do things in. Yeah, I put in systems in place and you got more people involved. When I started making Omega Horizon, the credits were me, myself, and I, all the way down the page, and now if you take a look, we have a team of over a dozen artists, we had several editors, I had a co-author who contributed to some of the story vignettes. We put little story vignettes at the start of each chapter to kind of help immerse you in the world and see the perspective of characters in the world. Obviously a very large team of playtesters. I'm very grateful for their contributions. Our layout design is fantastic. And so having all these people now that I built over the last 6 years, we're already starting to contract them for the next book to say, come on back, and now we'll get them involved in the early stages and all that more smoothly.
And now you only have to wait for the movie rights.
Exactly.
So we're almost out of time, but we got to do social media stuff. Where can people find more about the book?
Absolutely. So our website is www.paleogaming.com. You can find us on Facebook, just search Paleo Gaming. We have a Discord channel you can access through our game where you can chat with me about the game and chat with other people who played it. And the game itself is on Drive to RPG, so if you search for Paleo Gaming or Omega Horizon, you'll find it there for purchase, PDF or hardcover. And if you come to the Long Island Tabletop Gaming Expo in April, I'll have a table there that's April 5th and 6th.
Alright, so you were kind enough to give away a horrible book in a raffle. So why don't you pull out the raffle? Everybody has their raffle ticket. Rolling it out, no looking. You got one. You gotta read it. You're you read it.
Okay.
Can you not read it? Jen, would you like to read it?
376-887.
376-887, 376-887. It's gotta be one of you guys. Everybody's here. It's gotta, they're all here, so it has to be.
One that left.
Yes.
No, but I'm thinking.
What was the number again?
What's the number?
376-887.
Oh, yeah.
So we're almost out of time. Senior correspondent, any final thought?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much. This is amazing. This is totally amazing. And lots of luck with it. Thank you for coming down. And just everybody be nice to everybody. It doesn't cost anything.
Jen, final thought?
Stretch at least every 4 days. You'll end up like disabled like me right now.
Jamie, your final thought?
Thanks for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
My final thought is this. Thank you, Danny, for coming down to the show. It's a real amazing thing that so many years ago you were doing one thing and you've managed to transition to something else, which is just as awesome. You were a great guest back then, and you're a great guest right now. So that does it for this week on It Came From the Radio. If you missed any part of the show, go to our website, www.itcamefromradio.com. The button on there will take you to archives will be open in a week or so. Our next live show will be on Wednesday, April 9th. We will have author J.D. Rash, and he'll be giving away a copy of his book, and I believe he'll be giving away some tickets to a convention as well. Yes, Charlie?
Did you know his first name was Jody?
I did know his first name was Jody. So, thank you very much. We'll see you all next time on It Came From the Radio. So, the last for the audience.
Yeah.